Okay, so I'm going to go through this in 3 sections. First, talking about the people who have influenced me, who I call my mentors, and then take 3 principles from those individuals and carry them over into 2 bodies of work. So it's mostly images I'm going to show you. And the key people that have influenced me, most important mentor has been Flannery O'Connor. And through Flannery O'Connor, I learned to really read Thomas Aquinas, the Summa Theologia, from beginning to end, and also through her to read Jacques Maritain, who's a modern Thomist. And through them, specifically O'Connor, what was passed down to me are the 3 ways of seeing. And for me as a painter, it starts with the anagogical, how different levels of reality can be seen in one situation, or how, most importantly, the capacity to see the reality of divine life and our participation in it. And that's where I start, is from an anagogical vision. I'll be studying something, or I need to research something in order to understand it, and there will be a vision that kind of sums up the study and God's participation in it. And through that vision, I'll discern how to approach it, how to respond to it, and then go to the allegorical, which is the actual painting. How do I discern what images to use, what symbols, the colors, etc. So actually, I'm going to need my little notes here, my cheat sheets. So with O'Connor, it was through her, I think what she says about the anagogical is the virtues of art, like the virtues of faith, are such that they reach beyond the limitations of the intellect, beyond any mere theory that a writer may entertain, in my case, a painter. If the novelist is doing what as an artist, what he is bound to do, he will inevitably suggest the image of ultimate reality as it can be glimpsed in some aspect of the human situation. This is a painting that I did of the character Bishop from The Violent Bear It Away. And O'Connor says that when I write a novel in which the central action is baptism, I'm well aware that for the majority of my readers, baptism is a meaningless rite. And so in my novel, I have to see that this baptism carries enough awe and mystery to jar the reader into some kind of emotional recognition of its significance. To this end, I have to bend the whole novel, its language, its structure, its action. Distortion in this case is an instrument. Exaggeration has a purpose, and the whole structure of the story or novel has been made what it is because of belief. This is not the kind of distortion that destroys, it is the kind that reveals or should reveal. And here's an example of what I have learned to call a textual picture. The images I paint are pictorial texts, they're image texts. And I came to this image by really having to take the essence of what she's talking about, about baptism, and try to make the painting have that weight and mystery that she's putting into the written text. Other influences, let me just scroll down here a second. Sorry. Okay, other influences are, here's a sampling of them from saints and poets, the Catechism of the Catholic Church. I am a Roman Catholic. René Girard, who I found to be really a fascinating person to encounter. But this is a myriad of influences, the things that I've researched and studied. And what I really want to highlight are on the bottom row there, you have Nick Cave, the singer-songwriter, and his CD called Flesh Made Word, and it's about an analysis of the love song. And then the two on the far right, Vision and Painting, The Logic of the Gaze, and Looking at the Overlooked, 2 books by Norman Bryson, who he's a contemporary critical theorist who writes beautifully about painting. But through these 3 are these terms. The amoragraphomania. Nick Cave calls himself an amoragraphomaniac in that CD I had mentioned, Flesh Made Word, The Secret Life of the Love Song. And I found this wonderful essay this morning by Roland Bohr, who's talking about his use of the love song as a way to commune with God. And he says the basis of Cave's argument in the lecture is that a proper love song is one of deep, unrequited, and sad longing. Not only is the love song characterized by sadness and loss, but it is also a prayer, albeit with an artist's twist. Cave suggests that the love song creates God in its writing and performance, since God lives through the words of communication. Once he has made this point, God appears all over the love song, whether as the sound of our efforts to rise above our earthly states and become godlike, or as the light of God blasting through our wounds, or as the way we fill the silence between us and God, or even as a direct service to the God created by the love song. It's a really fascinating CD of just listening to Nick Cave talk about his writing process. And I've always said I relate far more to writers than I do to most artists. The way they think, the way they organize their creative process, I really relate to that. And then the other 2 principles or terms that I want to focus on in my work come from Norman Bryson's book, Vision and Painting, The Logic of the Gaze. And he focuses on 2 ways that pictures can communicate. One is megalography, or the depiction of those things in the world that are great, the battles of heroes and the crisis of history. So any paintings that are history paintings fit into this. Religious paintings of the crucifixion, they fit into this. And then the other thing he focuses on is repography. And this is the depiction of those things which lack importance, the unassuming material base of life that importance continually looks or that ordinary life continually overlooks. So it's these 3 terms that I think my work really, if one is going to sum up what I'm trying to do with an image, it's doing one of these 3 things. So for example, this is a painting that in the body of work that I did on the work of Flannery O'Connor. I studied her work and created a large portrait and 12 other paintings that reflected on her writing. And this would be an example of repography, and it's reflecting on the story, the Temple of the Holy Ghost, which is, how many of you know the story? Do you know the story? Well, it's a story about a little girl trying to understand what a hermaphrodite is. Very powerful story, a story written in the 1950s, unusual for her time, but a beautiful story. And the little girl is thinking to herself after she sees the person in the freak show, it had been a freak with a particular name. The girls heard the freak say to them, "I'm going to show you this, and if you laugh, God may strike you the same way. God made me this way. This is the way he wanted me to be, and I ain't disputing his way. I'm showing you because I got to make the best of it." The child felt every muscle strained, as if she were hearing the answer to a riddle that was more puzzling than the riddle itself. This is another piece from the O'Connor series, and I think more an example of megalography. And this is from, any know this story, The Violent Bear It Away? It's one of her novellas, but the scene is of a young girl who's a prophetess, and she's giving this soliloquy on the coldness of God. And this was my version of that. And then with Amoragraphomania, I did a body of work based on Love's Lyric. And this would be a sampling of rapography, Lily Among the Thistles, and Vale and Pomegranates, two very simple still lives that are inspired by the Song of Songs. And then another Amoragraphomania. This is my obsessive love letter writing to God. One of the interpretations of the Song of Songs that came up in medieval times is that it is, I mean, how can Christians understand the Song of Songs since it's from the Hebrew Bible? What is it? What does it mean to us as Christians? And one interpretation is that the Song of Songs is a love song to God and the individual soul, that's what the narrative is about. And so I think with that body of work, I really was in that state of amoragraphomania, this obsessive love letter writing to God, trying to understand what this text meant. And then with megalography, one of the last lines of the Song of Songs is, "Love is as strong as death." And so this is what I came up with for that. Okay. So in approaching immanence and transcendence, it's these, mostly through megalography or rapography, I'm trying to make pictures that can talk about immanence and transcendence, a kind of experience that we have in life. And the body of work that I want to focus on with this is the gray. Et lux in tenebris lucid, which is light in the darkness. And G.K. Chesterton says, "There is the back of all of our lives an abyss of light, more blinding and unfathomable than any abyss of darkness. And it is the abyss of actuality, of existence, of the fact that things truly are, and that we are ourselves incredibly real, and sometimes almost incredulously real." And the paintings and drawings in this exhibit represent a journey through a gray region where faith or faulty intuition at best is the only tool of navigation, be it a region created by the dark of war or mourning after a great loss. And I think what I'll do for just to save time here is just scroll through the images. This is a piece called Will Seen, Will Said, and it's a play on Samuel Beckett's story, Ill Seen, Ill Said. And in that story, you have this woman who's alone in this dark house. And Samuel Beckett, who is an atheist, in this story, as this woman wanders through the house, the only sound that can be heard is snow falling on the ceiling. And as she moves around the house, there's these recurring images of a dark curtain, a chair against the wall, and a lamb on wheels. And I just thought it was so compelling that you can take the boy out of the church, but you can't take the church out of the boy. And there's the lamb on wheels. This is the gray. This was my first year in Seattle and experiencing a lot of loss of my life in LA, my friends here. And so this seemed like an apt metaphor to play on grief and loss in this gray city that I was living in. This is a inspired by Emily Dickinson poem, after a great pain, a formal feeling comes. First chill, then stupor, then letting go. The mitten tree and the fairy tree. There's a lot to say about this, but I'm down to 4 minutes, so I'm going to move through these kind of quickly. The paddler. And that's a detail of the paddler. This is Lord Stanley Spencer reading love letters to his dead wife Hilda. If you know Stanley Spencer's paintings, wonderful Christian painter, precedes Lucian Freud, and everybody knows Lucian Freud, but when you look at Stanley Spencer's early work, Lucian Freud's looks a lot like it. This is Bonnets and Waterfall. Three shaker bonnets. Psalm cycle. So one of these for each time of day that the Benedictine monks are called to prayer. Saint Therese, pray for us. This is a large 6 by 4 foot painting of Saint Therese, the little flower. Hummingbirds. Apple peony prayer card. Tupelo, let me go there, he said, and it combines the Nick Cave song, about a torrent of black rain, with an R.S. Thomas poem. And then I'm going to just scroll through these really quickly. This is the Western Wall. This is the most recent body of work. And to just say what it was about was I had this place on Queen Anne in Seattle that overlooked the Puget Sound, and I thought, I'm gonna do a series of skyscapes, a series of landscapes, because I see these beautiful atmospheres outside the window. And I decided after painting all of these backgrounds that it just wasn't enough. You know, the world did not need another 20 landscape paintings. And I knew there wasn't enough in it. It needed something else. And I was reading Alice Munro's short story, Runaway, and there was a moment in the story where everything in the narrative flipped around. And it was just such a fascinating way of composing a narrative, and I realized this is what my paintings are missing. They're missing that spin that's going to import meaning in ways that I can't not try to do this. And so I went back to the work and tried to place emotive, the atmospheric quality of the paintings with this meditation on the Western Wall, and the Western Wall as in Jerusalem. Since my window faced west, and I would come home to this view, and the view was like a communion. Every time I walked in the house, I'd see different things, and so it began to be this meditation on the Western Wall and the history of Judaism and Christianity, the history of monotheism, and where the Western Wall is a touchstone for love and faith, and when it fails us, when is it an obstacle? And so the pairing of these atmospheres with the subjects in the foreground is the meditation. And I'll talk about one or two specifically. So here's Pierre Tayhard east of the Mercy Gate, and Pierre Tayhard is, I'm sure many of you know, was a Jesuit priest who wrote this amazing book called The Phenomenon of Man about evolution, and he wrote it in a time when the church had not quite accepted that evolution might be a possibility, so they wouldn't allow his works to be published or for him to teach, and they sent him off to China to work with the paleontologists who found the Peking man. But Julian Huxley, the biologist, thought this was a brilliant work and published it anyway. And so here's Pierre east of the Mercy Gate. And I just found him to be a mentor for me, someone who the church had failed him or exiled him, but the thing that inspired him was his faith, to write his book, The Divine Milieu. So it was a bit of an obstacle for him. This is Looking at the Overlooked, a portrait of George Tooker. Allegory of the Vine and Dry Bones. White Willow Tree. And this is the one that the book Runaway helped me to figure out how to compose. Illuminated Manuscript. The Ark of Tyre. Gate of Sharon. Little Red Boat. And this is Corporal Axe, and it's a diptych. It's not printing very well, I'm really sorry. The slide is not very good. So there, you can see a better representation of the slides if you go to the website. I apologize for that. I tried to make a PowerPoint that was going to be, the resolution would carry through. I had bigger slides, but the small ones just aren't showing that well, so I apologize. Okay, thank you.